Okay, so I'm in the van to do a little unboxing, and I don't know how to place you. I don't have anywhere good to place you. It is officially winter. Today is November 2nd, and Halloween was a little bit chilly. No snow. November 1st, it was snowing. So that's awesome. On Sunday, October 30th, we went to Galaxyland, which for those who are not Canadian and don't know, especially Albertan, Galaxyland is the world's largest indoor amusement park. And it is inside West Edmonton Mall. My husband went on a roller coaster with two of our kids, and I went on it with him, and I screamed the whole time. I hate roller coasters. And yeah, so I'm not sick, but I have lost my voice. I'm parked to pick up my kids, but I'm not parked where I normally am parked. I had to park, normally I'm parked along the road, but I had to turn in. So I gotta watch and see, because they won't turn their heads and look this way because I never park here. Anyways, got this big box from Indigo. I ordered some books from Thrift Books. Big long story, they didn't come in. Well, apparently they came in, but the postal service, the U.S. Postal Service, stopped delivering mail to my in-laws' place at the same time in the States. And it's super expensive to have it shipped to Canada. The shipping costs the same price as the books. It is cheaper, even paying basically double, paying for the books and paying for the shipping. It is cheaper than getting them brand new from, say, Chapters or Amazon. But these books I didn't really care about. When I got them, there was no need to have them right away. So I ordered them in December of 2021, was told that they shipped and they delivered, and I've never had a problem with Thrift Books ever before. And then my in-laws, because of COVID and some health issues and stuff like that, they have not gone down to the States all year this year, and they had to go down in September, and then found out my books never shipped. Big long story, all this stuff. Thrift Books was amazing, and they refunded me my money, but instead of buying more books from Thrift Books, which is what I wanted to do, but because of shipping and all this stuff, I ended up spending it at Chapters. So very excited. I bought this kid's book. Oh, it's so thin. Okay. I bought this kid's book. I saw these online on Chapters, and there's people, animals, numbers, and a few other categories. And I bought the numbers one this time, so Discovering Numbers, and it's in English, French, and Cree. Me and my family are English speaking, but my husband and his family are French Canadian. My husband was born in Alberta and grew up speaking English mostly, but his parents grew up speaking French. English is their second language. So they taught my husband French as well, of course, and he was in immersion and everything like that, and they spoke French at home. So he is bilingual. Anyways, English, French, and then Cree. My background is Métis, but I don't know what language would have been spoken. But Cree is one of the main Indigenous languages that would be around here. But this is so cute. Oh, and it starts with 0, so that's cool. And then 0, and then I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not sure. It says Ma Kikaway and then Nama Kikaway. So I don't know, is that the pronunciation or is that a second pronunciation? I don't know what the brackets means. Do they have pronunciation in here? The only reason why I'd be able to pronounce the French is because I know French, but oh, see, and it goes up to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and how to pronounce them in those languages. Oh, pronunciation guide. So 0, 0 for the French, and Mu Kikwe. I don't know how to find somebody who speaks Cree. But yeah, that's exciting. Oh, my kid should be coming any minute now. Sophie! Check out this book I got for you guys. Keep an eye for Maya. And I got this book, Betty, The Helen Betty Osborne Story by David A. Robertson and Scott B. Henderson. And I read a David A. Robertson book in September through October through the It's Time to Read book club thing that's going on through the library and the municipality and stuff here. And he's an Indigenous author, and the book I read from him was kind of like a memoir. And then I was like, I want to read all, like I found out he had children's books and graphic novels and all this stuff. And he talked about this story, the Betty story, and it deals with the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Then I found out about this Skoden, I believe is the word, Readathon, Indigenous Readathon. I had already ordered this book, so I'm excited that it will fit into the prompts as well. It's all black and white. It's really thin, so I can sit down and like take a bath and read this and enjoy the art style anyways. And then I got a couple of books for a different reading vlog I am planning. And I am so excited to get into these books. Yay. I'm glad it came. I'm glad the Betty one came in time. So today is November 3rd. So we are 3 days into the Skoden Readathon. And I am just participating for the first week in November. So of course it's going by like super fast because I don't have time to read all the books that I want to read. And now my baby's crying, so I guess I'll have to do this update later. He's spinning. Happy November 4th. I am a little bit stressed out about my reading and trying to read all the books in 1 week. I had a few books I wanted to read for November 1st to the 7th for this readathon because one of the challenges is to read just Indigenous authors, Indigenous lit for 1 week. So I was like, okay, instead of doing the whole month, I'm just going to do November 1st to the 7th. I will do the Indigenous stuff. And that's it. I'll focus on that. And then the 7th or the 8th until the 13th or 14th or whatever, I will do the Gilmore Girls readathon. And then the last half of the month, I'll read the books that I wanted to read for my birthday. And yeah, it's November 4th. And I've only read this much of this book. This is The Strangers by Katharina Vermette. I've only read this much. And then I am reading Murder on the Red River. And I have like an hour and a half of that one left. So I'm reading that as an audiobook. So that's good. But they're both, The Strangers and that book are both similar. They're not similar stories. This one doesn't have to do with a murder. The Murder on the Red River does, obviously. And one is audio and one is a physical book that I'm reading. But they're similar, like, contemporary reads. So I'm trying to, like, not get them mixed up. And I'm doing pretty good with that. Like, it's not too confusing. They're not similar enough, but yeah, I need something else to read this weekend. Today is Friday, so my son is gone for 25 hours only because of daylight savings, but he's gone on a beavers camp, like overnight sleepover camp thing. So I'm hoping to do, I have a middle grade book I want to read and then a graphic novel I want to read. So I'm hoping to, I'll put this one aside for a little bit. Like, I'll read it today, but then on the weekend, I want to focus on the middle grade and the graphic novel. And then get back to this one. I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this by Monday. But I will complete the prompt of reading just Indigenous literature for a week. So that's good. And this book cover... Hold on. It's on my bookshelf. So The Strangers has the colors that Kim was talking about that she made a prompt out of from that flag, I believe. So it's got red, I think it's red, blue, black, and green, or yellow. It's got purple. Well, this is more orange, this one, but these are red. So it's got like all the colors on it. So this fits that prompt. This technically fits the prompt of not reading a book from like beyond the 48. So there's the main like 48 states, and Kim wants you to read outside of that. So it can be Indigenous from Hawaii, from Alaska, from like Australia or New Zealand, or Canada. So for me, I am Canadian, and a lot of Indigenous literature that I read happens to be Canadian, as well as this one. Katharina Vermette is a Red River Métis, and she's from Treaty 1 territory, the heart of the Métis Nation, from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. So I felt like reading, although Canada is technically beyond the 48, I was like, reading Canadian Indigenous literature is basically like reading the 48 from the 48 states. So I was hoping to get something else like Australian or New Zealand or Alaskan. And I Googled it and I couldn't find any of the books that sounded interesting at my library, unfortunately. And then somebody online suggested a book, I think it was from New Zealand. And I was like, perfect. It's like $6 as an audiobook from like Audible. And then I looked and it was like with an Audible subscription, which I do not have. So I'm like, $33 for an audiobook. I'm not paying for that. It's like $35 for the paperback. I'm like, I can't afford it, and I don't have time to read this book. That's why I wanted the audio. And then I can buy it as a Kindle. I don't have a Kindle, but I could download the app, and it's like $8. So it's on my radar, but I'm not going to buy it right now. This technically fits the prompt, but I feel like it's kind of cheating for me. The other book I am reading is from the Red River one is, what state is it? Michigan? No. Anyways, that one is from like one of the 48, but it's still outside of what I normally read, Indigenous-wise. And the middle grade and the graphic novel I have are also Canadian, so I am reading something outside of Canada, so that's good, I guess. And this book is about, The Strangers, is about this family, and their last name is Stranger. So you're getting the point of view from 4 different people, and it's like the grandmother, the mother, and 2 of the daughters. And thank you to Katharina. I read her book. I read her audiobook, The Break. Well, it's a physical book as well. I read it as an audio break last year for Indigenathon. That would be a good one to go back and reread, like physically, because it was good, but it was all these different stories. And it's like this person's story and then this other person's story. And then like they all converge somehow. But you can kind of get lost if you're not paying like super close attention. So having a physical book of it would be good. But it was still a good audiobook. But thank you to Katharina for the family tree at the beginning of this book. So that is awesome. And I have flipped back a few times. And you're following like this is the great grandmother. So you're getting a little bit of her story, but not a lot of it. She's already passed on at this present time that we're reading. And then Margaret is the grandmother, and then Elsie is the mom, and then her kids Phoenix and Cedar Sage are who we're following. I read another book at the beginning of this year, I believe, and I think her name was Cedar. It was another Indigenous book, The Future Home of the Living God, and I like that name. I don't want to say cute name, but it's a pretty name. I like that name. Anyways, this book. Cedar has nearly forgotten what her family looks like. Phoenix has nearly forgotten what freedom feels like. And Elsie has nearly given up hope. Nearly. After time spent in foster homes, Cedar goes to live with her estranged father. Although she grapples with the pain of being separated from her mother, Elsie, and sister Phoenix, she's hoping for a new chapter in her life, only to find herself once again in a strange house surrounded by strangers. So, books like this, Phoenix, she's 17 at the beginning of the story, and she is in, like, juvenile detention, and it starts with her pregnant and, like, giving birth. And then, obviously, the baby is taken away from her because she's in jail. Cedar, her younger sister, is 14-ish, 13, 14 at the beginning of the book, and she is in foster care. And it makes me so sad because, like, reading about the foster care system in these books, and this is in Canada, too, it just talks a lot about how they get bounced around so much from one house to another. And even in the Murder on the Red River book, the main character in that, Cash, she spent time in foster care as well. And it just breaks my heart to see that, to hear these stories of these kids. Like, I guess, the dog's barking. I don't want to make it sound like I'm like the white savior or whatever. It doesn't matter like who's in foster care, like black, white, Indigenous, Asian, whatever. Like when I hear stories about these kids who go through the foster care system and they go from house to house to house to house, are abused, neglected, whatever. They sometimes might have a good home or maybe just like an okay home. Like maybe they're not abused and that's like the best part about that house. That's it. Or they're just kind of like forgotten or whatever. It just breaks my heart. And I want to take those kids into my home and hug them and tell them they are loved and they are worthy and that it's none of their fault and all that stuff. Or even just working like as a social worker or whatever and trying to be that positive influence in their lives. I know like I can't be the savior to anybody for any reason whatsoever, but it just breaks my heart so much. And I just want to love on these children. But me and my husband are not in a place right now or that's really an option. Like, if you came to my house and dropped a kid off at my door and was like, you have to take care of this kid, I'm not just going to neglect the kid. Obviously, I'm going to take the kid in. We're not in a place right now to be able to handle more children. But I hope that one day God will bring us to a place where we can be more of an influence and a help to kids that are in need and need that hug and that love and that support and that encouragement. And it just breaks my heart. And I always wonder why, like, when these kids end up in foster care, why do they go from home to home to home to home? Why do they, like, at most spend a year with a family? Why can't they just stay with one family for the duration of the time that they are in foster care? And ideally, the kids in need of foster care would go to their family. And so, say I took in a child at whatever age, like newborn up, if I took in that child because, say, it's like an emergency situation, like our puppy was an emergency situation. They're like, okay, she's coming in. She was very swollen and very, very, very sick. And they're like, we need a foster now. And I'm like, yeah, I'm free. We don't have another dog in the house now and we can take her. So emergency situation, you take in a person and then they find a family member, then I can understand them going to live with that family member if it's obviously a safe place. And like in this situation with Cedar, she doesn't know her dad at all. She's like never met this guy before. I think like maybe when she was like under 3 or whatever, but like who remembers that, right? And so it is a strange situation, but like he's in a good place. He's remarried. They make good money. They're stable home, things like that, right? So like it's a good situation for her, but she doesn't know him. But at least it's family. So there's, you know, some back and forth there and her mom is unable to take care of them. Yeah, I always wonder, like, why don't they just stay with the families that they're put into foster care with? And I know there's a lot of times where, like, the kids will be really difficult. And especially, like, as they get older and they become teenagers. And they're moody and they're hurting and they're in pain and they're lashing out. And it becomes too much. And the foster parents will be like, I can't handle this child anymore. And it's just so heartbreaking because if it was your own child, you would do so much to try and make it work. And I'm not saying that every foster parent is like that. That's just like, oh, she broke curfew for the 3rd time. She's out. Or he's out. Like, I'm not saying that all foster families are like that, obviously. But it's just so heartbreaking. And, like, these kids deserve for us to fight for them. Just to fight for their childhoods. And to teach them that, like, not everyone is evil. Not everyone's going to abandon them. Not everyone is bad. They are loved and they are worthy. That this is a safe place. You know, like, they need safe adults in their life. And it's too bad that kids of any race, any gender, any situation get moved around so much in the foster care system. And it's such a broken system. I don't know personally, like, what the foster care system is like. I know a couple that does do fostering of, like, babies and, like, young kids. There are good people out there. And I don't know why these kids get moved around so much. And I don't know how they end up in abusive homes when there's supposed to be so many checks for that, to like home inspections to keep kids from going into abusive homes. Like, these are supposed to be better than the situation they were living in, right? Like, that's the point. Yeah, I don't know. We just live in such a broken world and it's so sad. But at the beginning of this book, she has like a trigger warning. This book is about coping with the systems that have been imposed upon us. So there are plenty of triggers for those whose lives have been traumatically affected by them. These include depictions of child apprehension, solitary incarceration, suicide ideation, some drug use, and some physical violence. It's not just about that, hey? And I do try to cram as much love and hope in between as possible. There is sadness, but there's also hope. And I'm only 110 pages in to over 300 pages. So I'm looking forward to more hope and love in this. But I'm going to go deal with my baby. So today is November 7th, which is day 7 of reading Indigenous literature for my week-long reading to mark that off the bingo board. And then the rest of the month is going to be a bunch of other reading stuff. But I've only managed to finish one Indigenous thing so far, and I'm sick now, so that's great. I've started a lot of things, but only finished the audiobook, which was Murder on the Red River, and it is the first in a series. I really liked that. I really enjoyed the narrator. She had a really good voice for that, for reading books. I would be interested to continue on, because it kind of ends, not like with a cliffhanger so much, but like the mystery of that book was solved and stuff. But the girl, Cash, your main character, she is 19, and she's just signed up for college. So, like, it's going to continue following her, and I assume it's going to follow her go to college and stuff. And this takes place in 1970, so I don't know if that has to do with anything, just that it's more of a historical fiction than the other stuff I've been reading. I'm sick, I'm very stuffed up, and I can't hear, so I don't know how loudly I'm talking or not, but hopefully the audio is okay on this. I started reading The Barren Grounds yesterday. On Saturday, I started reading the short story collection Ghost Lake, which I only got 2 of the short stories read in that, because one of the prompts I think was a short story or poems, and I just do not connect with poems at all. I've tried, they're just, I don't know, I don't connect with them. So instead of picking up a poetry collection, I picked up the short stories, the Ghost Lake, and the first 2 stories I read were good. There are some like disturbing scenes in them, but I guess it's supposed to be horror. But I thought they were really well written and good stories. Like, I don't typically read short stories, but they were enjoyable for what they were. The first one had to do with this kid that is like a pyro. He's an arsonist, and fire is very exciting for him. Like, he gets like sexually excited by fire. And so that one was kind of interesting. Like, obviously you can't talk about them too much because they're short stories. And I don't know what's really a spoiler or not, but you get, at the end of the story, you kind of get to see, like, where his obsession with fire started. It was good because you saw just, like, a sliver of his life and how starting fires and stuff has affected him and the area around him and things. So you just get that, like, little sliver of his life, but then you also get, like, background information about, like, where the obsession started and stuff. So that was good. And then the second story was about a woman, she's 18, I think, and her twin sister went missing. So she's one of the murdered, missing Indigenous women, and she went missing along the road the year prior to that, but she feels and sees, like, her sister's presence. Like, her sister can communicate with her and stuff like that, but she's not sure if she's hallucinating her sister or if she's actually there and communicating with her. And then I don't know how to pronounce her name at all, but the main character is trying to get into town and has to hitchhike, and things happen from there. So that's all I've read from that. It's quite thick. It's almost 300 pages of short stories, so I won't be able to finish that. Obviously, I'm not finishing anything today. I have completed the audiobook of Murder on the Red River, and then I am also reading The Strangers, which I don't think I'm quite halfway through that, but I put that aside to try and read some of this is the middle grade one, and then I was focusing on the short stories as well. Like I said, I've been sick and just trying to edit some videos and doing some other things, so I have not been focusing on reading the way I've been wanting to and just been distracted and stuff. This Barren Grounds, the main character in Murder on the Red River, Cash, and in The Strangers, they all deal with being part of the foster care system, and it's so depressing and so sad, like I was talking about earlier. It's just a sad part of especially Indigenous history with, at the end of the Red River, there's an author's note that talks about, like, the Indigenous, like, it's called, like, the 60s scoop, and talking about Indigenous children that have been taken from their families and placed into mostly white families into foster homes. And I don't know how much that happened in Canada. This is Canadian, and The Strangers is Canadian as well. So, like, we have foster care here as well, of course. But I'm not sure, like, the 60s scoop, I think that was Canadian. But I'm not sure how much it went across, like, Canada and the States. It happened in both places, obviously, foster care. But anyways, that's just really tragic and sad and hard to read about, especially in so many books that I'm reading all at once. It was in the Red River one, but it wasn't quite as prevalent. Like, she's gotten out of that situation now at 19 and just talks about it as, like, her past and, like, surviving it and making it on her own kind of thing. So it's there and it's part of her past, where this is, like, current. The Barren Grounds, the main character's name is Morgan, and she is currently, like, in foster care. She's just been in this new home for 2 months now. The family, they don't have any kids of their own, James and Katie, and this was like their first chance to be able to have a child in their home, and Morgan is 13, and a week ago they also are fostering a boy, Eli, who's 12. So they're older kids too. So this foster family, like, they want children of their own, but they're not bringing in like a newborn or a young child. They're bringing in teenagers, right? And they're trying like really hard to connect with Morgan and Eli, and reading all the books and learning, like, because they're a white couple, and Morgan and Eli are both Native, and Morgan has been in the foster care system since she was like 3, and then Eli, this is his first experience in a home, and we don't know like why they were taken from their families, but Morgan, this is all she knows, this is her life, and so she's disconnected from her heritage and her Indigenous culture and stuff, and the parents, the foster parents, are trying really hard to connect her to that, and like she's been there 2 months that day, so they're like, let's get some Indigenous takeout, and they have like bison stew, I think, and bannock and stuff, and then they're getting her like moccasins as a gift, and like she's just mad, and she's like, I don't know anything about my culture, I don't know what like any of this stuff means or whatever. She's just angry, and they're like, we're trying to help you get connected with your culture, and she just has a lot of hurt and a lot of anger. And I made 2 highlights already. She already talks about twice, like, my mom didn't want me, my mom left me, my mom abandoned me. So there's a lot of hurt and anger there, and it's really hard to read, but I hope that it gets more hopeful, because Katie and James are really trying really hard, and they're naive and they don't know what to do, and this is their first experience fostering, and they're fostering they're fostering 2 children of a different culture than theirs, right? So that's a really difficult and hard thing to do, but they're trying. Anyways, this is the book 1 of the Misua saga, and it is like Narnia meets traditional Indigenous stories of the sky and constellations in an epic middle-grade fantasy series from award-winning author David Robertson. I want to reread Narnia this month as well, or like into December for the end of the year. I want to reread Narnia, so it's kind of cool. And I picked this up because I just read David Robertson's nonfiction book Blackwater in September and October, and it was really good, and so I wanted to pick up his middle grade book, and the graphic novel I have is also by him, and I just absolutely love this cover. Look at that, so beautiful. And then at the beginning of the book, something I appreciate, well, they have a map. I'm guessing this is like the Narnia world. I'm not sure what the world is called yet. I think she's just about to discover it, actually. You got you resting on my not nursing anymore, but sleeping baby. So that's cool that this one has a map. The Strangers has a family tree in it. But also they have Swampy Cree. That is what David Robertson's like dad would have read. His dad is Cree, and his mom is like Irish or something. His dad would have spoke Swampy Cree. Not this story, like David Robertson, because like I said, I just read his like memoir, nonfiction about him and his dad. It was part of the residential schools, and they weren't allowed to speak their own language, right? But Swampy Cree is what he would have traditionally, his mother tongue, his first language was Swampy Cree. So there's like the sounds of these letters, and then a glossary of the different words that apparently we will encounter when we get into the Narnia world. Portal opens up to another reality, and then ASCII, yeah, bringing them onto, okay, I think ASCII is the, like, Narnia world is the name of it. It means earth or ground, but it says a portal opens to another reality, ASCII, bringing them onto frozen barren grounds where they meet, make sure I'm pronouncing this as well as I can, Ochek, which means fisher, the only hunter supporting his starving community, Misawa. Okay, so this is also called the Misawa saga. We're learning together. So the community, it sounds like, is Misawa. Ochek welcomes the human children, teaching them traditional ways to survive. So anyways, I'm not in there yet, so we'll figure all that out. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to complete as much as I wanted in the 7 days. The readathon goes all month. But like I said, I have other books I'm going to be picking up for this month. But I did my 7 days of reading, and I'm happy with that. The books, although sad with the foster care systems, and this one seems a little bit better in the sense like Morgan is really upset about being in this situation, but her family is good. And like the strangers, they've been a part of a lot of bad foster care systems, and even in Murder on the Red River, she was a part of a lot of bad foster care families. And in this one, Morgan had been, but she's currently in a good place. So there's some hope and stuff there as well. Oh no. Baby's having a little nappy nap, being all smiley. Smile. Yeah. So we will see you later after we've read a little bit more. What's so funny? Look! To Jesper Duff. Little You by Richard Von Camp. Illustrations by Julie Flett. From your great-grandpa. Little You, Little Wonder. Little Wish, Gentle Thunder. Look, there's 2 kitties. Meow, meow. You are mighty, you are small. You are ours after all. Little star with little wings. Oh. Let's all dance. Let's all sing. The puppy, woof woof. You are life and breath adored. They're fishing. They're fishing. You are us and so much more. Little ember with growing light. Do you see the fireflies? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 little fireflies. There's more on the grass. We're almost in the book. Feel our love as we hold you tight. You are the birth of everything new. You are perfect. You are you. The end. So today is November 8th. Happy birthday, Maya. I'm going to be ending this vlog like right away, even though I didn't finish all my prompts or finish all my books, but I'll try and do a wrap up at the end of the month to talk about how I feel about the end of all these books that I have read for the 7 days for the Skoden Readathon. I hope I'm saying that right. The Indigenous reads. And I am halfway through this. This one's a really quick read, actually. I'm on page 121. So yeah, I'm like halfway through it. A little bit more. I just looked. We were at the bookstore. Today is my daughter's birthday, and I took her out for Cora's, and she needed time. Like, we have a baby, so he doesn't really count, but she needed some time, just like me and her, my husband and her dad kind of thing. So my husband's at work, so I just took her out, dropped the kids off at school, and I was like, Maya's gonna come back, like, gonna be out for the morning, but no, she was out all day. But that's okay. And she's just at the library grabbing a book right now, so I'm just in the van while the baby's sleeping. Oh, we were at Kohl's, which is like the mini version of Chapters that like small towns get and stuff like that, like little malls and stuff. So they have the 3 in this series, including this one. I bought this a couple weeks ago from there, but the other 2 are in hardback, and I bought this one in paperback, so I don't want to spend the money on the hardbacks. It just kind of sucks because the 3rd one I think just came out, so I'd have to wait to get that one. But this is $12.99, and then the hardbacks are like $21.99. If I wait to get the other 2 in paperback, I can get both of them for basically the same price as the one hardback. Hardback is nice, but I really do like this cover. It's not the best lighting or position. You're plugged into my van charging right now. Hardcover is nice, but I'd rather save the money and buy it in paperback. And I think my daughters could read this too. It's middle grade, and my daughter is 9 years old today, and my other daughter will be 11 in January. So I think they could both probably read this. Anyways, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about Morgan. I mentioned this earlier. The 2 kids are in foster care, and they end up in this like Narnia-like world. And it's unfair of me. I was thinking about that. It's unfair of me to keep comparing this to Narnia. There's a lot of books out there like that you go like through some kind of portal, like it's a fantasy thing, and Morgan really likes fantasy books and stuff. Like you open up some kind of portal and end up going into this other world. Narnia is really the only book I've read that's kind of like that. And this does say on the back, Narnia meets traditional Indigenous stories. But it's not fair for me to just like constantly be referring to it as like Narnia. But for me personally, when my husband's like trying to explain something to me I don't understand, like a story from a video game or a book or a movie or a TV show that he's watched, or trying to explain something else, I try to think of something else that's similar to it that I can compare it to help my brain understand what he's talking about. He'd be like, this happens in this story, and I'll be like, oh, kind of like how this happened in this book, and he'd be like, or in this movie, and he'd be like, yeah, a little bit like that, but then this. So comparing it to Narnia, I'm not trying to like downplay the importance of this book or compare like if I like Narnia better or not. This one is different enough that it's comparable in the sense that there's like talking animals that walk on two legs, and how they get there through like a portal. It's in the attic, and there's like a locked closet area, and that closet on its own doesn't seem to have any like magical properties. Like there's no way out there. Like when you go into the wardrobe and you close it, and then Lucy like backs through the wardrobe through the coats, and then all of a sudden she's like in winter and like in a whole other land. This one, the boy Eli drew a picture, and he's really good at drawing, and she's like, wow, it's really pretty, and he's like, I want you to put it up in your secret place up in the attic. And so she's like, okay, and they start to like nail it to the wall, and then like wind starts blowing and it starts snowing inside the room in the attic. So it's not comparable to Narnia enough to say like, oh, I like Narnia better than this. They're different enough stories that this stands on its own. It's not a retelling of Narnia either, but Misua is the world. So just comparing that, like Narnia is the world, that helps me put it into context, I guess, and kind of like understand how it's put together. And I'm actually excited to be reading this because I want to reread Narnia this year. So it's kind of, I'm reading I have another book that's about Narnia and stuff too. So I'm reading all like the Narnia things this last couple months of the year. So that's kind of cool. Anyways, Morgan. Maya, can you go return that really quick?
Yeah.
It's due. It's past due. Yeah, run. So Morgan, she talks about like, this is like her 8th family or something, foster family she's been in. And she says she tried to think if this was the first time she'd ever been camping. She was sure it was. A family she'd stayed with a few years earlier, family number 5 she guessed, had gone on camping trips, but hadn't taken her with them. They'd seen fit, just like the family before Katie and James, who she's with now, to send her off to respite instead. What was so awful about her that they'd rather leave her behind than take her with them? And then she thought, am I awful? And the other family that she's talking about, family number 5, and then the family before Katie and James, like if the whole family, like say me and my husband and my 3 kids and our 4 kids were going, and say we had one foster child, and we're like, okay, we're gonna go to the movies. We would like take the whole family, but leave the foster child at home if they're old enough, or with a sitter, and we just take our family to the movies. And then turn around and tell that foster kid, oh, we want you to feel like you're part of the family. What? And then she was talking about how the one family she was with would do that. They would pack up like all their children and their dog and travel across the United States to go visit one of their families, one of the like grandparents, but leave her in respite care. And she's like, they wanted me to be part of the family, but then they left me behind. Well, they went to go visit family on a family trip, but even the dog was considered more family than she was. And I was like, that's so brutal. Like, I've had a dog for a long time, and Maribel went with us. If we could take her, she went with us everywhere. She was part of the family. She was our dog. If I had a foster child, why would I leave them behind? From my understanding, the government gives you money to help with the cost of having a foster child in your home. So there's really no excuse to leave them behind. Like, even if I was traveling like overseas, like I want to go on a family trip to Japan, if I can afford to take that child with me, then it's like all of you are coming or none of you are coming kind of thing. Like, I need to budget that. And especially like going to the movies, like, what is that? Movies are expensive. Just the 5 of us to go is like $100. But so you add on another $20 to take them with you. Like, yeah, Jasper doesn't count though. Yeah, for money. He doesn't count for money. But he eats me.
Oh my god.
He eats my milk. He can't eat the snacks at the movie theater just quite yet.
Yeah, no, but like...
But anyways, if I had a foster kid, like, they're going to be involved in the things that my kids are involved in. Like I said right now, Maya, it's her birthday. And so me and her are out shopping and going to chorus and stuff, and the other kids aren't, even though they're my family, because it's not their birthday, and they get their own special things on their birthday. And we also do like special dates and stuff like that. Like I'll take Rylan on a day, I'll take Sophie on a day, Jesper gets every day. I just don't understand this thought of like you taking care of this child, but then just leaving them behind and not bringing them with you. Like it's so heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. I feel so bad for Morgan, and I just want to give her a hug and be like, I love you. And she also says, like, in there, she's like, am I awful? And she's like, I acted awful today. And she had, like, a really bad day. And you know what? We all have bad days. And there are days where we are awful. But that doesn't mean we don't deserve love. That doesn't mean our family should just, like, disown us. Or, like, if Maya's having a bad day, I can't just send her off to a different be like, call the government up and be like, hey, my daughter had a bad day today. Find a new family for her. Like, why are we doing that with foster children? Even if one of my kids is, like the worst. They're out there, they're stealing cars, they're stealing TVs, they're setting fire to homes and stuff like that. I literally can't just get rid of my children. But you can do that with foster kids. Like, I know it's different, like when you're fostering and you need that support and stuff like that, but you can't just give up on your foster child because you had like one bad day kind of thing. Like, it's just, it's so depressing and so sad.
Look at the camera, Mom.
This one?
Yeah.
I am.
The other book I got.
Anyways, hold on. I got like a camera in the car, so I was checking on the baby because I can't see him through his thing. What book did you get, Maya?
Look at actually.
Just tilt it up. Alright. Anyways, that's my update for now, and I'll probably, like I said, close off this vlog and just wrap up what I read at the end of the month. So I'm here to do a very quick little wrap up of my 1 week of reading for the Skoden Readathon, where I finished nothing. That's not true. I finished one book, but I need to focus. I have to film so much and edit so much, watching so much BookTube, that I'm just falling behind in my reading in general. But let's talk about what I read in this vlog. Last week, I had gone on a roller coaster and screamed my head off, and yeah, I know. Screamed my head off and hurt my throat. And this week I'm sick. So we're doing awesome. So I listened as an audiobook to Murder on the Red River by, not by Cash. It's a Cash Black Bear Mysteries #1 by Marcy R. Rendon with Siri Scott as the narrator. And there was the prompts here. One of the prompts was to read SGJ, which is Stephen Graham Jones, Rendon or Wyden. So I picked Rendon because I could find it on Hoopla as an audiobook, and that also counts for an unread Indigenous author. I've read one Stephen Graham Jones before, which was The Only Good Indians, and I have not read any Wyden yet. The Murder on the Red River is, I'll just read the description really quick off of Storygraph. A murdered man in a field. The sheriff needs Cash, a 20-something tough, smart Indian woman with special seeing powers. Cash and Sheriff Wheaton make for a strange partnership. He pulled her from her mother's wrecked car when she was 3. He's kept an eye out for her ever since. It's a tough place to live. Northern Minnesota along the Red River. Cash navigated through foster homes and at 13 was working farms. She's tough as nails, 5 feet 2 inches, blue jeans, blue jean jacket, smokes Marlboros, drinks Bud long necks, makes her living driving truck, playing pool on the side. Wheaton is a big lawman type, maybe Scandinavian stock, but darker skin than most. He wants her to take hold of her life, get into junior college. So there they are, staring at the dead Indian lying in the field. Soon Cash was dreaming the dead man's cheap house on the Red Lake Reservation, mother and kids waiting. She has that kind of power. That's the place to start looking. There's a long and dangerous way to go to find the men who killed him. Plus there's Jim, the married white guy, and Long Braids, the Indian guy headed for Minneapolis to join the American Indian movement. So this is part 1 in a series, so I think some of it, like that last part about Long Braids, you don't hear about that as much in this book. And the thing about Cash's powers, it's not very, like, prominent. Like, it is there. She has a dream. And sometimes it's like a waking dream, like a vision that she has. And then she just saw this like house and felt like she had to go to that reservation because Wheaton, the sheriff, is also like, the feds are looking into it just because of where this Indian, it says in the description, Indian. So that's why I said that. Where this dead man was found isn't quite like in his jurisdiction kind of thing. So the feds are looking into it. And they're in like suits, white guys. This also takes place in the 70s. And Wheaton kind of mentions to Cash, they'll probably do better talking to somebody of their own kind, of another Indigenous person. And she gets this like vision of the house and stuff, and she goes to talk to the woman even before they know the identity of the dead man. And she's like, I just had a vision of your house, and I just want to come and talk to you and tell you like this. Like, she's waiting for her husband to come home. They have 7 kids. And she's like, I just wanted to break the news to you in a more gentle way than, like, a couple of white guys in suits. And she has another vision about something else. But it's not very, like, if you go into this thinking, like, it's, like, super magical realism and stuff, it's not quite like that. It's very subtle. But I really, really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed it as an audiobook. Like I said earlier, the narrator was really good. And I liked Cash as a character. And I would definitely be interested in following her story as she starts college and stuff, because at the end of the book, she's, like, signing up for it. It's really good, and I enjoy it, and I'm glad that I got to discover a new author. And I think the audiobook is, like, 6.5 hours? 6 hours, 3 minutes long, it says. So it's not, like, a super long read either, so that's nice as well to have some shorter audiobooks to be able to listen to. Definitely worth listening to. I'd give it, like, a 4 out of 5 stars, probably. Let's keep going along. There's middle grade or children's prompt, which I'm still in the middle of the Barren Grounds, which I talked about. I'll just read the back to you so you get an idea of what it's about. Morgan and Eli, 2 Indigenous children forced away from their families and communities, are brought together in a foster home in Winnipeg, Manitoba. They each feel disconnected from their culture and each other and struggle to fit in at school and at their new home, until they find a secret place walled off in an unfinished attic bedroom. A portal opens up to another reality, ASCII, bringing them onto some of the language in here is Swampy Cree, so sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. There is a glossary at the front of the book that I talked about. It's a lot to like flip back and forth every time you're reading, but ASCII. So ASCII is like the world they're in, bringing them onto frozen barren grounds where they meet Ochek, or Fisher, the only hunter supporting his starving community, Misawa, sorry. All that is. So Misawa is the community, and ASCII is the world, I guess, if I remember that correctly. Starving community. Ochek welcomes the human children, teaching them traditional ways to survive. But as the need for food becomes desperate, they embark on a dangerous mission. Accompanied by Arik, a sassy squirrel they catch stealing from the trap line, they try to save Misawa. I'm going to pronounce it wrong every time, I'm so sorry. Misawa. Before the icy grip of winter freezes everything, including them. When it comes to mispronouncing words that are not in English, just ask my kids. They're in French immersion, and they're like, Mom, you can't speak another language at all. So, sorry. This one has a lot of conversation about being in the foster care system, and this girl, and, like, Morgan, and the hurt that she's dealing with in this. So, it's tough. Middle grade just hit so hard. I can't believe how hard some of these middle grade books hit when I read them. So, that could definitely be a trigger warning, for sure. I'm trying to feed him an oatmeal and raisin cookie, but he can't eat raisins. Just yet. Yeah, you eat it. Good job. So good, and I can't wait to get the other books as well, which I talked about a little bit, about looking for the paperbacks. I did read 2 short stories in Ghost Lake, so these were the short stories, and this is also an author I haven't read from, and this also counts for the prompt of queer and two-spirit rep. Nathan Newden Adler is author of Wrist, an Indigenous monster story written from the monster's perspective. I could not find that one at my library, unfortunately. And co-editor of Bawajian, Stories of Power, a dream-themed anthology of Indigenous writers. He is two-spirit, Jewish, Anishinaabe, and member of Lac des Mille Lacs First Nation. Originally from Ontario, he currently resides in Vancouver. So I am kind of from Vancouver. I grew up there. From Alberta. Grew up in BC. Yeah, so he's Two-Spirit, Jewish and Anishinaabe. So I thought that was an interesting combination. The first 2 stories of this were really good, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm not going to finish it right now. It's a lot to do. It's a lot to read. It's a thick book. And then I was listening to Books and Lawless wrap up for October, and she read it. She talked about like how good it was, and I'm like, oh, I should read it, but we'll see. I'm not going to stress myself out. I read 2 of the stories. It was good. I can always pick it up again later or next year or something when I have more time. Prioritize that for like the month of October maybe, because it's like spooky books. And then I am just halfway through The Strangers by Katharina Vermette. All these books pretty much count for beyond the lower 48 for the main 48 states. Unfortunately, I was not able to get any books at this time from like Australia, New Zealand, anything like that. But this does count for that. All these books pretty much count for that as Canadian anyways. It has the MO book cover, like I said earlier, with the red, the blue, the black, green, yellow, and I have not read a nonfiction. That's the one I would have to read to complete the full bingo board. But yeah, that's my wrap up for now. I'm really liking this. This one also, again, I keep saying this over and over and over in this vlog, deals with the foster care system and stuff like that. So definitely, I read, I think, the trigger warnings in this book. But it's good. It's good. I'm really enjoying it. She's a really good writer. I'm gonna go. Thank you for watching. Comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know what Indigenous reads you have been reading this year, and if you're participating in this readathon this month. And, oh, baby, say bye. I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Bye. Can we get a laugh at the end? Instead of just you're crying?